This is my HOMELAB in its current state. Specifically, this tower is my main Unraid server, and it's what I'm going to talk about today. This is the main server that runs most of the services that I run. It's in this old Roseville case that I bought for a gaming computer build that I did for my dad years ago. Funnily enough, that video is actually still on this channel. Over the years, I've had to heavily modify it to fit my hard drives, and it's basically at full capacity as it currently stands. That means that I can't really upgrade the storage unless I also figure out a different case situation. Luckily, I did figure out a different case solution recently. This is the DarkRock Classico Storage Master, and I picked it up used off of Facebook Marketplace for about $65. It goes for about $90 new. Luckily, this version also came with a few dust filters, which will come in handy because currently, my system is pretty dusty. With this new case and me needing to swap components over, I thought it would be the perfect time to talk about my HOMELAB hardware. This is kind of a companionship video to the software side of things where I showed all of the services that I'm currently running on my HOMELAB if you want to check that video out. As a side note also, if you're curious about how this 10-inch rack works, what's in it, and how I have my whole network wired up, let me know and I can make a video on that too. With all that out of the way though, we're gonna need to swap the components from my old Roseville case into this new DarkRock case. But before I could even get started with that, I'm gonna need to do some serious cleaning of this new case. I have absolutely no idea where this case was before me, but I do know that it might be the dirtiest piece of computer hardware that I've ever seen. There's probably a millimeter thick layer of dust caked onto some of these fans, and there's no shortage of dust bunnies hiding around in here. I didn't record all of this, but it genuinely took me probably about 3 hours to get this thing looking spiffy again. Now, with that all cleaned up, as I mentioned before, this is the DarkRock Classico Storage Master. It's a full ATX computer case designed specifically for custom NAS builds. To that effect, in the front, it has 4 3.5-inch drive mounts that each holds 2 drives for a total of 8 drives in these caddies. There are also 2 drive sleds that can each hold 1 drive that go on the bottom of the front, making that room for 10 drives total so far. And finally, around back, there's another one of those cages that holds 2 hard drives. So all in all, this case can hold 12 3.5-inch hard drives, which is pretty good for its size. Aside from the 3.5-inch drives, there are also slots for 2 2.5-inch drives here on the back, and a third one on top of the 3.5-inch caddy here in the back as well. Aside from storage space, this case also fits ATX, MATX, and ITX size motherboards, a PSU with a maximum length of 200 millimeters, 7 PCIe slots with 2 optional vertical slots for vertical mounted GPUs, and it can fit a GPU of up to 400 millimeters if you remove one of the hard drive cages, and if you decide not to remove that, then a maximum length of 295 millimeters. It has 7 slots for fans and a smattering of other radiator configurations if you're a psycho who likes to water cool your NAS. All summed up nicely, this thing can pack in a lot of hardware. Also, like I mentioned earlier, this bad boy retails for about $90 new, which I don't think is an unreasonable price to ask for this, but being the cheapskate I am glad that I found it for cheaper. With the speeds and feeds of this case out of the way, let's get into the actual hardware swap. I wasn't able to get much footage of the swap itself, so we're gonna have to settle for one of these. Everything is looking pretty nice in this new case, especially compared to the old one. But what is all of this hardware I'm using, and how did I come to put it in my HOMELAB? Well, let's start with the brains of the operation, the CPU. I have a Ryzen 9 3900X CPU here, which is a 12-core, 24-thread monster based on the Zen 2 architecture. This chip originally released in 2019, so it's a little bit older, which means I was able to get it from eBay for about $138 delivered, which I think is a pretty good bargain. The CPU is being cooled by a Thermalright Peerless Assassin, which cost me about $30 new off of Amazon. I don't know what the prices are these days. Right next to that is 32 gigabytes of DDR4 non-registered, non-ECC memory that I got for about $100. I actually purchased a different computer for a different project, was able to get a really good deal on this RAM. I took that RAM out, put it in my server, and resold that old one that I bought off Marketplace. So all in all, I took less than $100 hit to get this DDR4. And that's during the RAM-pocalypse, so that's a pretty good deal. The 3900X fits nicely into this Asus Prime X570 Pro motherboard that I got a good eBay deal on too for $86 delivered. I got a good deal because it has a problem with its Ethernet jack, and the locking mechanism for the first PCIe slot was also missing. Neither of those caveats bothered me much though, because I was able able to work around them. First of all, the PCIe locking mechanism isn't actually crucial, especially if you screw in whatever your expansion card is properly. To deal with the Ethernet issue, I actually have this Intel X540-AT2 10 gigabit NIC that I got from a friend who had an extra one laying around. So I don't even need to bother with the wonky onboard one. Accompanying that NIC over here in PCIe land is a relatively new to me RTX 3060 12 gigabyte that I picked up a few weeks ago from Facebook Marketplace for $185, which I got it for a steal, honestly. Getting off of motherboard mounting components though, let's talk storage. This is the part of my home lab where I kick myself in the pants the most. Right now, I have a total of 3 hard drives. I have 2 4 terabyte HGST refurbished hard drives that I got from goharddrive.com that came with a 5-year warranty. These are pretty high-end NAS drives, but since they're used and refurbished, I was able to get them each for $55. That was last year though, before the prices of hard drives have skyrocketed this year. My regret with going with 4 terabytes instead of 8 or 12 terabytes is obviously that now hard drives are more expensive than they have been in a very long time, but hindsight 2020, I should have told myself to get those 8 terabytes instead of these 4s. My third drive is just an old 1 terabyte WD Blue that I had from, again, my dad's old build that was in this case because he's since upgraded. So it's nothing fancy, but another terabyte's another terabyte. In a perfect world, I would have a handful of much higher capacity, much higher reliability new hard drives, but this is the market in which we live. Staying on the topic of storage, I've got 2 256 gigabyte SATA SSDs around the back of the case. I got these from an uncle who works as an independent IT contractor and tends to collect some things that are considered e-waste to the companies that he works for, so I ended up getting these for free from him. These 2 drives act as a mirrored cache pool for storing things like my container app data and generally just to write to first to improve downloading or transfer speed performance. And since these are mirrored, one of these drives can fail without me actually losing any data. All of this is being powered by a Corsair CX750W 80+ bronze power supply. This is actually the very same power supply that I used in my very first full computer build. So I'm kind of happy to still have it in production. Now, the astute among you may have noticed that I haven't talked about a boot drive in all of that storage. That's because my current boot drive is an Intel M10 16 gigabyte module that is in this USB to M.2 adapter. I did a whole video on setting this up if you want to check it out here. Moving all of the hardware over to this new case was a little bit of a challenge. To start off, my old case was very cramped, and that meant that there was a certain order of operations I had to go through to get all of the components out. Building in the new case is definitely better than building in this old case, but doesn't come without its caveats. There aren't great cable management options, and all of the drive caddies use 4 screws and a latch to hold them in place, so it was kind of annoying to put them in. I'm also less than pleased with the cabling options for all of my SATA cables. I expect that if I had slimmer, more flexible cables, this would have been easier, but with these just standard SATA cables I have, it was quite annoying. It also took quite a bit of effort to make sure that I could close the back panel. Since I chose to put the SATA connectors for my hard drives on that side, it's a really tight fit to put that back panel on without putting too much extra pressure on the cables or the connectors. I did get it working though. Overall, this is far from the nicest case that I've built in, but it is a huge step up from my previous one and gives me so much more room to grow into in the future. And for 65 bucks, I'm pretty pleased with it. Now, why did I talk about all of my hardware components, how I found them, and what I paid for them? Because I am proof that deals exist and that you can get into this hobby for an affordable price. Now, by no means do you have to get the hardware that I have, and I don't even use all of this hardware to its fullest potential. The point is that you can start self-hosting with this or with something much less. It's not too hard to get started for under $100 and definitely under $200 with old mini PCs or what other people consider e-waste. I even did a video on a self-hosted game server that has a ton of tips about how to find an old office computer or something that will work for very affordable. Now, I was able to get a solid home server for a pretty affordable price in my book. Now, I was able to get a pretty solid home server for an affordable price, but it didn't happen all at once. I upgraded a piece or two here or there for affordable prices over the last year. I have not bought a single new thing other than my CPU cooler. They've all been either used or heavily discounted. All this to say that if you're looking to get into this, take your time, find or wait for some deals, And don't be afraid to reach out to people who you know who might have extra computers laying around that they might consider e-waste, and just start with that and then upgrade over time when opportunities present themselves. I've had so much fun with this hobby of home labbing, and I want to do my part to make it accessible for other people as well. So I hope that you found this video interesting and helpful to that effect. Thank you for taking the time to watch this far, and if you feel like you got something out of this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel for more content like this in the future. If you're looking for something else to watch right now, maybe consider watching this video about why I think you should start self-hosting, or this one on maybe some services that you should start with. Thanks again for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.